Hey guys, tonight we wake not beneath soft blankets or the glow of a phone screen, but on a rough straw mattress inside a chilly wooden workshop where the smell of fresh-cut oak hangs in the air. Sawdust drifts through thin beams of morning light, and somewhere beyond the walls a rooster has decided that sleeping is a terrible idea. Before the sun has even climbed above the horizon, your new medieval life is already demanding your attention. The bad news is that you have somehow become an apprentice carpenter in the Middle Ages. The worst news is that you probably won't survive this. At least not without collecting enough splinters to build another chair. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what your local time is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink slowly, unsure whether you are still dreaming. The ceiling above you is crossed with thick wooden beams, darkened by decades of smoke from countless winters. Tiny cracks run along the timber, each one quietly telling a story that no one remembers anymore. A faint breeze slips through the narrow gaps between the planks, carrying the scent of damp earth mixed with pine. There are no electric lights to greet you, no comforting hum of modern machines, only the crackling remains of last night's fire, and the distant crowing of roosters competing with one another across the sleepy village. For a few peaceful moments you simply lie there. The straw mattress beneath you rustles every time you move. It is surprisingly scratchy, and you quickly discover that medieval bedding has little interest in luxury. Somewhere under your shoulder, a stubborn piece of straw insists on poking through the thin blanket. You adjust yourself once, then twice. The straw wins. Outside, someone is already walking across the muddy street. Their wooden shoes make a slow, clacking rhythm that echoes between the timber-framed houses. Another voice answers from farther away. A dog barks once before deciding that the effort isn't worth continuing. The village is waking, and so must you. Before you have the chance to wonder where you are, a deep voice cuts through the quiet workshop. Up already. You turn. Standing near the doorway is an older man with broad shoulders, weathered hands, and a beard sprinkled with gray. His linen shirt is dusted with tiny curls of wood. His leather apron hangs heavily from years of hard work. Every wrinkle on his face suggests someone who has spent far more time looking at timber than mirrors. This is your master. He doesn't smile, not because he dislikes you. Smiling simply isn't considered an essential morning activity when there is work waiting. He studies you for a long second before nodding toward a wooden bucket. Wash. Simple instructions. Medieval management at its finest. You shuffle across the cold floorboards. The bucket contains water collected yesterday. Overnight, it has become astonishingly cold. You dip your hands inside and immediately regret every life decision that somehow brought you here. Your face receives the same icy treatment. There are no fluffy towels waiting nearby. Instead, you wipe your hands on a rough piece of linen that feels suspiciously similar to sandpaper. Congratulations! Your day has officially begun. As your eyes adjust to the dim workshop, you notice the incredible collection of tools hanging neatly along the walls. Long hand saws, heavy wooden mallets, sharp chisels lined carefully from smallest to largest, wooden planes polished smooth from years of use. Each tool occupies its own place. Nothing is scattered, nothing is wasted. Everything matters. In a world where replacing a tool may require weeks of labor by a village blacksmith, every piece of equipment receives remarkable care. The master walks past the wall of tools almost absent-mindedly, gently touching the handle of one chisel as if greeting an old friend. Perhaps he is. Some of these tools may have belonged to his own master decades earlier. Perhaps one day they will belong to you. If, of course, you manage not to accidentally chop off anything important before then. Outside, the sunlight slowly begins washing over the rooftops. The village itself is small. Most homes are built from timber frames packed with woven branches and clay. Thin streams of smoke curl upward from stone chimneys. Chickens wander freely as though they own the place. Judging by their confidence, perhaps they do. Beyond the houses stretch open fields covered in gentle morning mist. Farther still lies the forest. The forest is everything. It provides timber for homes, firewood for warmth, handles for tools, wagons, barrels, doors, tables, cradles. even coffins. Nearly every wooden object surrounding you once stood quietly among those distant trees. Your master notices you staring toward the forest. He simply says, "Wood feeds everyone." At first the sentence sounds strange. Then you begin noticing just how true it is. Without wood, there are no houses. Without houses, there is little protection from winter. Without carts, there is no easy transport. Without barrels, there is little storage. Without furniture, daily life becomes much harder. Without skilled carpenters, entire villages struggle to grow. The carpenter is not merely someone who builds things. He quietly shapes everyday life itself. You hadn't expected that. You imagined endless hammering. Instead, you find yourself standing inside the heartbeat of a medieval community. A faint smell of fresh oak reaches your nose. Nearby rests a stack of newly cut boards waiting to be shaped. The grain catches the morning light beautifully. Each piece carries its own swirling patterns, unique as fingerprints. Your master runs one weathered hand across the timber. Every board tells you how it wants to be worked. You aren't entirely sure what that means. Right now they all look equally wooden. Perhaps wisdom arrives later. Perhaps after several thousand hours of accidentally doing things backwards. The workshop door creaks open. A younger apprentice enters carrying an armful of firewood. He gives you a quick nod before setting the bundle beside the hearth. No lengthy introductions, no dramatic speeches. Just another pair of hard-working hands beginning another ordinary day. You realize something comforting. No one here expects perfection. They expect effort. They expect patience. They expect you to listen more than you speak. The master gathers everyone together with only a glance. No bells, no whistles, just quiet understanding developed over years of routine. Outside, the sun climbs a little higher. Dust dances lazily through shafts of golden light. Somewhere nearby, an axe strikes wood with a slow, steady rhythm. Birds begin singing in the hedgerows. The village stretches awake one peaceful breath at a time. And as you stand in the middle of the workshop, breathing in the scent of pine, oak, smoke, and fresh morning air, you begin to feel that this strange new life might not be quite as frightening as it first seemed. Demanding? Certainly. Cold? Absolutely. Filled with endless chores? Without question. But beneath all of that lies something unexpectedly calming. A slower world. A quieter rhythm. A place where each sunrise begins with honest work, careful hands, and wood patiently waiting to become something useful. Your apprenticeship has only just begun. Tomorrow, before the first rays of sunlight fully reach the workshop windows, your real lessons will quietly begin. The workshop is fully awake long before the sun has reached the rooftops. No one announces the beginning of the day. There is no bell, no clock hanging on the wall. Only the quiet understanding that work begins when the sky begins to brighten. You discover that being an apprentice has very little to do with building magnificent tables or elegant chairs. At least not yet. Your first lesson is much simpler. Pick up the broom. The broom itself is handmade, tied together from stiff bundles of twigs fastened to a smooth wooden handle. It looks surprisingly ordinary, yet your master hands it to you with the seriousness of someone passing down an ancient family treasure. He points toward the floor. No explanation follows. Apparently sweeping requires no lecture. You begin pushing the broom slowly across the workshop. At first it seems impossible. The floor is covered with wood curls, tiny chips, sawdust, bark fragments, dried mud from yesterday's boots, and enough loose straw to make another mattress. Every stroke gathers a little more. The pile grows steadily. Soon you notice something interesting. The wood shavings smell different depending on the timber. Fresh pine carries a clean, sweet scent. Oak smells heavier and richer. Ash has its own subtle fragrance. Without realizing it, you're already beginning to recognize wood before even touching it. The master notices. He says nothing, but the smallest nod suggests you're paying attention. That is enough. The workshop slowly fills with gentle sounds. A broom brushing rough planks, a bucket being set down, the creak of leather aprons, someone sharpening a blade on a whetstone. Outside, birds continue their cheerful debate about absolutely everything. You continue sweeping. Around each workbench, beneath heavy timber beams, into every corner where dust likes to hide, modern workshops might rely on machines to remove debris. Here, every handful of sawdust is moved by human hands. It is slow, oddly peaceful, and surprisingly satisfying. Once the floor is clean, another task awaits. Your master gestures toward the tools hanging neatly along the wall. Each one must be inspected, one by one. You remove the smallest chisel first. Its steel edge catches the morning light. The wooden handle has been polished smooth by decades of use. You carefully wipe away yesterday's dust using a soft cloth. The master watches silently. A moment later he speaks. A dull tool is dangerous. That surprises you. Surely sharp tools are more dangerous. He shakes his head. A dull blade slips. Simple. Logical. Hard to argue with. One after another you clean every tool. Hand saws, planes, augers, mallets, squares, marking gauges. Every piece has its proper place. If one tool goes missing, everyone notices immediately. Nothing here is considered disposable. A single well-made chisel might serve 3 generations. That changes the way people treat their possessions. The tools almost feel alive, not magical, simply respected. Nearby, another apprentice begins oiling wooden handles. He works slowly, no rushing. Oil protects the wood from drying and cracking. Small habits like these quietly add years to every tool. You begin understanding that craftsmanship starts long before cutting timber. It begins with preparation. Outside the doorway, a cart rolls past. Its heavy wooden wheels rumble over uneven ground. The sound fades gradually into the distance. Perhaps another carpenter, perhaps a farmer delivering lumber, perhaps a merchant heading toward market. Life outside continues at its own gentle pace. Inside, your world remains wonderfully small. A workshop, a broom, a few trusted tools, a patient master. Morning sunlight now stretches farther across the floor. Golden beams illuminate tiny dust particles floating lazily through the air. For a brief moment, the entire workshop sparkles. The master notices you watching. Beautiful, he says quietly, then adds, dust still needs sweeping. Even beauty apparently has chores attached. After cleaning comes organizing. Every stack of timber must be sorted. Long beams on one side, short boards together, firewood separately. Nothing should block the pathways. If someone carrying a heavy beam trips over scattered lumber, injuries follow quickly. Order keeps everyone safe. You help lift several oak boards onto wooden racks. They're surprisingly heavy. Your arms begin protesting almost immediately. The older apprentices barely seem to notice the weight. Years of practice have quietly transformed their strength. No one boasts about it. Strength is simply another tool. As the morning continues, your master demonstrates how to inspect each plank before using it. He studies the grain carefully. Knots, cracks, curves, tiny imperfections invisible to you somehow reveal themselves instantly to experienced eyes. This board wants to bend, he says. He sets it aside. Another plank receives approval. You wonder how he knows. Perhaps wood really does speak. Just very quietly. Next comes sharpening. The whetstone rests beside a bucket of water. Its surface has been worn smooth over countless years. The master places a chisel against the stone. Forward, back, forward, back. A slow, soothing rhythm fills the room. No wasted movement, no unnecessary force, only patience. Steel gradually becomes sharper. Watching him feels strangely calming, almost meditative. When your turn arrives, you attempt the same motion. Forward, back, forward. Too much pressure. The blade catches awkwardly. You stop immediately. The master gently adjusts your grip. No hurry. Those 2 words seem to describe the entire workshop. No hurry. Not because work is easy. Because rushing creates mistakes. Mistakes waste wood. Mistakes damage tools. Mistakes injure hands. Patience, you begin realizing, may be the most valuable skill of all. By now, delicious smells drift through the open doorway. Fresh bread baking somewhere nearby. A pot of vegetable stew bubbling gently inside another home, wood smoke curling lazily into the cool morning air. Your stomach notices before you do. It growls loudly. One apprentice smiles. The first smile you've seen all morning. Even the master almost smiles. Almost. Instead, he simply hands you another broom. Apparently, hunger builds character. You continue sweeping outside the workshop entrance. Mud must be cleared away before customers arrive. Loose branches removed. Wood scraps stacked neatly. Presentation matters. People trust organized craftsmen. Soon a customer appears carrying a broken wooden stool. He greets your master respectfully. The stool is placed carefully upon the workbench. Before discussing repairs, your master quietly brushes away a few remaining wood shavings from the bench. Only then does business begin. Cleanliness speaks before words. You file that lesson away. The customer leaves after arranging to return tomorrow. Work continues without celebration, without applause. Simply another ordinary morning. Yet you already sense that ordinary mornings repeated thousands of times slowly create extraordinary craftsmen. You wipe the last bench clean, hang the cloth neatly, return the broom exactly where it belongs. The workshop now feels different, calmer, ready, prepared for whatever the day may bring. Your master finally looks around the spotless room. He gives one small nod, no grand compliment, no speech, just quiet approval. Somehow, that feels better than praise. You take one slow breath, filled with the comforting sense of pine, oak, linseed oil, fresh bread, and clean morning air. The real woodworking has not even begun. Yet already you've learned something important. Before creating beautiful things with your hands, you first learn to care for the place where those hands will work. And somehow, in the peaceful silence of this medieval workshop, even sweeping the floor has begun to feel like part of the craft. The morning chores are finally complete. The workshop floor is clean enough that the scattered rays of sunlight now reveal more polished oak than loose sawdust. Every tool hangs neatly upon its peg. The timber has been stacked. The benches are ready. Only then does your master decide that you are worthy of touching the tools, not using them, simply touching them. He walks toward the long timber wall, where dozens of woodworking tools wait in perfect order. You cannot build, he says quietly, until you know your companions. He doesn't call them tools. He calls them companions. You find that oddly comforting. He reaches for the first one, a hand saw. Unlike the shiny steel saws you may imagine today, this one looks wonderfully simple. Its blade is narrow, slightly uneven from years of sharpening, and fitted with a sturdy wooden handle, polished smooth by generations of hard-working hands. He places it carefully into your grip. It is heavier than expected, not painfully heavy. Just solid, balanced, comforting. This cuts with patience, he explains. You look at the long row of sharp teeth. They appear eager to argue otherwise. Outside, birds continue singing while a gentle breeze carries the scent of pine through the open doorway. The master places an oak board onto a sturdy workbench. Watch. He begins sawing. There is no rushing, no violent movement. The saw glides forward, then back, forward, back. Each stroke is smooth, almost musical. The sound fills the workshop. Shh, shh, shh. Tiny curls of fresh sawdust drift softly onto the floor. You almost forget you're watching work. It feels more like listening to quiet rain. When your turn arrives, you grip the handle tightly, too tightly. The master notices immediately. He gently loosens your fingers. The saw already knows how to cut. You blink. It only needs your guidance. You begin slowly. The blade catches, stops, tilts sideways. You sigh. The master merely nods. Again. You try once more. This time, the saw finds its rhythm. Forward, back. The cut is not perfect, not even close. But the wood begins to separate. For a first attempt, that feels miraculous. Next comes the wooden plane. It resembles a smooth wooden block with a sharp blade hidden inside. The master runs it across the surface of a rough oak board. Long, delicate ribbons curl away effortlessly. One after another, thin enough to see sunlight through them, they fall onto the bench like golden ribbons. You pick one up. It smells wonderfully fresh. Warm oak. Clean. Earthy. The board underneath transforms before your eyes. Rough grain becomes silky smooth. The change is almost magical. Except there is no magic. Only skill. Years of skill. When you try using the plane yourself, the first push barely removes anything. The second digs far too deeply. The third sends the tool bouncing awkwardly across the board. The master quietly steadies it. Listen. You pause. To what? The wood. You almost laugh. Then you hear it. When the blade cuts correctly, the sound becomes soft and even. When something is wrong, the sound changes immediately. The wood truly does speak, not with words, with resistance, with vibration, with sound. The lesson surprises you. Your ears are just as important as your eyes. The next companion waits patiently upon the bench, a chisel. Simple, sharp, elegant. The master places its edge against a block of oak, then gently strikes the handle, using a wooden mallet. Tock, tock, tock. Small chips fall away with astonishing precision. Each strike removes only what is needed, nothing more, nothing less. Soon a neat groove appears. Straight, clean, purposeful. You try. Your first strike is too soft, nothing happens. The second is far too enthusiastic. A large chunk breaks away. You freeze. Surely disaster has arrived. The master examines the damaged wood. It becomes a smaller project. You stare. Then he smiles. Only for a heartbeat. Apparently even medieval carpenters appreciate quiet jokes. The damaged block becomes today's practice piece. Mistakes, it seems, are simply expensive teachers. Nearby rests another curious tool. A brace and bit. It looks almost like a giant wooden crank. The master explains that it drills holes before screws exist. You place the bit against the timber. Slowly turning the handle, you feel the steel bite into the wood. Round curls spiral upward. The smell of fresh oak grows stronger. Each turn requires steady pressure. Too fast, and the bit jams. Too slow, and progress disappears. Finding balance becomes another lesson. Nearby hangs a wooden square. At first glance, it appears almost boring. Two pieces of wood joined perfectly at a right angle. The master treats it with enormous respect. If your corner is wrong, he pauses. Everything becomes wrong. Suddenly, the simple square feels incredibly important. Even the smallest mistake at the beginning grows larger later. You silently promise yourself to remember that. The marking gauge comes next. Its tiny pin scratches perfectly straight lines into timber. No ink, no pencil. Just a fine groove. The master smiles faintly. The saw follows the line, not the other way around. Preparation always comes first. You spend nearly an hour simply drawing practice lines. Straight, parallel, evenly spaced. No cutting. Just learning accuracy. It is strangely calming. Outside, village life continues. Children chase one another through muddy streets. A blacksmith's hammer rings somewhere beyond the houses. A horse snorts beside a cart. Wind rustles through distant trees. Inside, however, your entire universe has become one wooden workbench. One ruler. One line. One careful movement. As the morning stretches onward, your hands begin remembering motions before your mind does. Lift, measure, mark, check. Only then cut. The rhythm quietly settles into your muscles. The master watches from across the room. He rarely interrupts. When he does speak, it is usually only 3 or 4 words. Measure once more. Slow your hands. Feel the grain. Good. That final word feels surprisingly rewarding. By midday, your fingertips carry tiny traces of sawdust. Your sleeves smell faintly of pine. Your shoulders ache gently from unfamiliar movements. Yet something unexpected has changed. The tools no longer feel intimidating. They feel familiar, not mastered. Far from it, but introduced, like new friends, whose names you finally remember. The handsaw teaches patience. The plane teaches smoothness. The chisel teaches precision. The mallet teaches control. The brace teaches rhythm. The square teaches honesty. The marking gauge teaches preparation. Each tool carries its own quiet personality. Together they transform rough timber into something useful. More importantly, they slowly transform you. You realize that your apprenticeship is not only about building tables or doors. It is quietly shaping the carpenter himself. One careful cut at a time. As sunlight grows brighter across the workshop floor, your master gently gathers the tools and returns each one to its proper place. Nothing is left lying around. Every companion goes home. Tomorrow they will teach you another lesson. And somehow, you already find yourself looking forward to it. The tools have introduced themselves. Now it is time to meet the reason they exist. The forest. Your master announces the journey with only a few words. We need more oak, no dramatic speeches, no elaborate preparations. Simply another ordinary task in the life of a medieval carpenter. Before sunrise has completely faded into morning, you help load an empty wooden cart. Thick ropes are coiled neatly along one side. Iron wedges, axes, and a long two-man saw are secured carefully beneath the seat. Every tool has a purpose. Every item has been checked twice. A forgotten rope could mean leaving valuable timber behind. The horse waiting outside snorts softly into the cool morning air. Its coat glistens with tiny drops of dew. Patient and sturdy, it has likely walked this same forest road hundreds of times before. You gently pat its neck. It barely notices. Clearly, you are far less interesting than breakfast. The master climbs onto the wagon. With a gentle click of his tongue, the horse begins moving. The wheels creak. The wooden axle groans. Soon the village disappears behind you. Morning mist still blankets the nearby fields. Farmers can already be seen working quietly in the distance. Some guide oxen through damp soil. Others repair fences broken by winter winds. Everyone seems busy. No one appears hurried. That difference surprises you. Life here is demanding, yet strangely unhurried. The road gradually narrows. Fields give way to hedgerows. The scent of damp earth grows stronger. Soon enormous trees begin appearing on both sides. The forest has arrived. Sunlight filters gently through thousands of green leaves overhead. Golden beams drift lazily between towering trunks. Birdsong echoes everywhere. Woodpeckers tap rhythmically against ancient bark. Somewhere farther away, a squirrel scolds the entire world for reasons known only to squirrels. The air feels cooler beneath the trees. Cleaner. Almost sacred. Your master removes his cap for a brief moment, not from habit, from respect. The forest gives. He pauses. We take only what we need. You had expected medieval people to cut every tree they could find. Instead, you discover remarkable patience. Large, healthy trees remain untouched. Young saplings are carefully avoided. Only mature timber suitable for construction is selected. Entire villages depend upon these woods lasting for generations. Destroying them would mean destroying their own future. The master stops beside an enormous oak. Its trunk is so wide that several people together could barely wrap their arms around it. The bark is deeply furrowed. Its branches stretch high above, like the ceiling of a great cathedral. You quietly wonder how many children have climbed this tree, how many storms it has survived, how many winters it has patiently watched, perhaps 200 years, perhaps more. The master studies the trunk carefully. He circles it once, then twice. His fingertips brush against the bark. He examines the direction of the branches, the slight curve of the trunk, even the roots. Choosing a tree, you realize, is every bit as important as shaping it later. Not every oak becomes a roof beam. Not every ash becomes a wheel. Not every pine becomes furniture. Each tree has its own strengths, its own future. Satisfied, the master marks the trunk with a simple axe cut, nothing elaborate. just enough for everyone to understand. This tree has been chosen. The two older apprentices prepare their axes. You watch closely. The first strikes are slow, measured. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Each blow lands almost exactly upon the previous one. Wood chips scatter across the forest floor. The smell of fresh oak fills the air. It is rich, warm, almost sweet. Soon the master hands you a smaller axe. Your turn. You grip the handle carefully. The tool feels familiar now. Not because it is easy, because your hands are slowly learning the language of wood. You swing. The axe strikes, not perfectly, but solidly. A small chip flies free. The master nods. Again. You settle into a rhythm. Swing, strike, pause, breathe, swing, strike. The forest echoes softly with every blow. No one speaks much. Conversation seems unnecessary. The work itself becomes the conversation. After nearly an hour, the notch grows deep. The opposite side receives matching cuts. Then comes the long saw. Two workers grasp opposite handles. Back, forward, back, forward. The steady rhythm feels almost hypnotic. Fresh sawdust gathers beneath the trunk. Birds continue singing overhead, seemingly unconcerned by human industry. Then something changes. Tiny cracking sounds emerge from high above. The master raises one hand. Everyone steps back. Silence. The great oak leans almost imperceptibly. Another crack. Leaves begin trembling. With a long, slow groan that seems to come from the earth itself, the enormous tree begins its final journey. It falls with surprising grace. Branches brush neighboring trees. Then, a deep, rolling crash echoes across the woodland. Silence returns almost immediately. Dust floats gently through the shafts of sunlight. No cheering follows, no celebration, only quiet respect. The master removes his cap once again. You do the same. A tree that lived for centuries has just become part of countless future homes. Its story is changing, not ending. Soon the apprentices begin trimming branches. Nothing is wasted. Small branches become firewood. Straight limbs become tool handles. Strong sections become beams. Even scraps often find another purpose. Waste is a luxury medieval villages simply cannot afford. As you help remove branches, you notice tiny rings inside freshly cut wood. You count them curiously. The master smiles. Each ring. He taps the trunk. 1 year. Suddenly the tree feels even older. Each ring represents another spring, another winter, another year of quiet patience. By midday, the massive trunk is finally ready for transport. Using ropes, wooden rollers, and remarkable teamwork, everyone slowly guides it toward the waiting wagon. It moves only inches at a time. No machines, no engines, only careful planning, steady effort, patient hands. Eventually, the oak rests securely upon the cart. The horse glances backward with what appears to be mild disappointment. Apparently today will be heavier than yesterday. The journey home begins slowly. The loaded wagon creaks beneath the tremendous weight. Its wheels sink gently into patches of soft earth before climbing onward again. As sunlight dances through the leaves above, you glance one final time toward the clearing where the great oak once stood. A beam of light now reaches the forest floor, where shade had ruled for generations. Already, tiny young saplings nearby seem ready to grow toward that opening. Life quietly continues. The forest loses one giant. Many smaller trees gain their chance. The master notices your thoughtful expression. The forest always remembers. You nod slowly. Perhaps that is true. Every table, every chair, every doorway, every roof beam, every cradle, every wooden spoon, they all begin here, among birdsong, morning mist, towering trees, and the patient silence of a medieval forest that has been quietly providing for generations. As the village rooftops finally come back into view, you understand something that seemed invisible before. A carpenter's work never truly begins inside the workshop. It begins here, deep among the ancient trees, where every carefully chosen piece of timber carries the memory of the forest with it. The great oak has returned with you. Slowly, steadily, the heavy wagon rolls back into the village, its wheels pressing deep tracks into the soft earth. Children pause their games to watch. A baker briefly steps outside his shop, wiping flour from his hands. Even a passing shepherd glances toward the enormous log resting on the cart. Everyone notices fresh timber, not because it is unusual, because it represents future homes, stronger barns, new furniture, repaired bridges, and warmer winters. The master gently guides the horse into the workshop yard. "Easy now," he murmurs. The horse seems to understand. It slows to a patient stop beside the lumber rack. You quickly learn that bringing timber home is only the beginning. Freshly cut wood cannot simply become furniture overnight. The master places his palm against the oak. It still holds the forest. At first you don't understand. Then he explains. Fresh timber contains moisture. Too much moisture. If worked immediately, it may shrink later. Twist, warp, crack. Patience begins long before the first cut. Some of today's timber may not be used for months, perhaps even years. The realization surprises you. In your mind, carpenters simply built things. Instead, they spend much of their lives waiting for wood to become ready. Several apprentices help unload the massive log. Using thick ropes, wooden levers, and carefully placed rollers, the oak slowly slides from the wagon. No one forces it. No one rushes. The log moves only a few inches at a time. Every movement is planned. The master often says very little. Today he simply repeats one sentence. Control the weight, not lift it. Control it. There is a difference. The oak settles onto wooden supports with a heavy, satisfying thud. The journey from forest to workshop is complete. Now another lesson begins. The master reaches for a simple measuring rod carved from ash wood. No numbers are painted across it, only carefully spaced marks cut into the surface. Every carpenter owns measuring tools slightly different from another's. That is why a single master usually measures every important project himself. Consistency matters more than perfection. You watch him study the giant oak. His eyes move from one end to the other. He walks around it twice, then kneels beside the trunk. He isn't measuring only length. He is reading the tree, the gentle curve, the position of knots, the direction of the grain, the slight narrowing toward one end. Every detail matters. He finally looks toward you. What do you see? You answer honestly. A log. He smiles. A future roof. That answer changes everything. Suddenly you begin imagining invisible beams hidden inside the timber. A strong, straight section for supporting a farmhouse. Smaller pieces for tables. Shorter blocks for stools. Nothing is simply wood anymore. Everything has potential. The master hands you a length of charcoal. This is your pencil. You begin marking the timber. The charcoal leaves bold black lines across the pale oak. At first your marks wander slightly. The master quietly wipes them away. Again. This time you steady your breathing. You mark another line, straighter. Better. Good. Only one word. Yet it feels like a reward. Soon the measuring lesson becomes far more complicated. Every line must be checked twice. Every angle compared with the carpenter's square. Every distance confirmed before cutting begins. The master repeats a saying you will hear many times. Measure twice. He pauses. Cut once. Simple words. Easy to remember. Much harder to follow. Especially when excitement encourages hurried hands. You spend the next hour measuring practice boards rather than valuable oak. Each apprentice receives several rough planks. Draw a line. Check it. Check again. Then ask another apprentice to check it once more. No one laughs when mistakes appear. Mistakes discovered before cutting are free. Mistakes discovered afterward are expensive. One apprentice accidentally measures from the wrong edge. His line misses the correct position by the width of 2 fingers. The master notices immediately. Instead of scolding him, he asks quietly, "What changed?" The apprentice studies the board, then finds his mistake. He erases the line with a scraper, starts again. Lesson learned. No embarrassment. Only improvement. When your turn comes, your first measurements seem correct, almost. The master lays his measuring rod beside yours. One end matches perfectly. The other does not. Your line has drifted ever so slightly, barely noticeable. Yet across a roof beam, such a tiny error could become several inches by the far end. You erase it, begin again. This time you crouch lower. Look directly across the board. Carefully align the square. Draw slowly. Perfect. The master nods once. You begin appreciating why carpenters often appear calm. Calm hands create accurate work. Hurried hands create firewood. Outside, afternoon sunlight warms the village. The smell of fresh bread drifts once again through the open doorway. Somewhere nearby, the blacksmith continues striking glowing iron. Clang, clang, clang. The rhythm blends softly with birds singing in nearby hedges. Inside the workshop, however, another rhythm has taken over. Measure. Check. Mark. Check again. Only then. Cut. Your body slowly begins remembering the order. You no longer need reminding. Preparation becomes habit. As shadows grow longer across the workshop floor, the master demonstrates something fascinating. He places two identical boards side by side. One has been measured carefully. The other intentionally contains tiny mistakes. At first they appear identical. Then he joins them together. Immediately the difference becomes obvious. One corner refuses to meet. A narrow gap appears. The frame twists slightly. Even tiny mistakes multiply. The carefully measured boards fit together almost effortlessly. Straight, strong, balanced. The lesson requires no further explanation. Accuracy is invisible until it disappears. Later, you help mark several oak beams that will someday become part of a farmhouse. Each beam receives small carpenter's marks carved lightly into the surface. Simple symbols, easy to recognize. These marks help everyone remember which piece belongs where when construction begins. You find yourself admiring their simplicity. No complicated drawings, just practical knowledge passed quietly from one generation to another. As the afternoon slowly fades toward evening, your charcoal-covered fingers reveal how much you've practiced. Your knees ache from crouching beside heavy timber. Your eyes have grown surprisingly tired from concentrating so carefully. Yet your confidence has grown as well. Earlier this morning, a measuring rod looked like nothing more than a stick. Now it feels like one of the most important tools in the workshop. Because every masterpiece begins with a single accurate line. The master gently gathers the measuring rods and carpenter's squares. He hangs each one carefully back upon the wall. Tomorrow they will guide another project. Another beam. Another doorway. Another lesson. As you brush the last traces of charcoal dust from your hands, you glance once more toward the enormous oak resting quietly in the corner of the workshop. It no longer looks like a tree. It already looks like tomorrow. Morning returns with its familiar rhythm. The first rays of sunlight creep quietly through the workshop windows, painting long golden lines across the oak beams resting patiently where you measured them yesterday. Dust drifts lazily in the still air, and somewhere beyond the walls a rooster confidently announces another day that nobody asked him to announce quite so loudly. The workshop smells wonderfully familiar now. Fresh oak, pine shavings, linseed oil, smoke from the small stone hearth. You no longer feel like a stranger here. Your hands automatically reach for the broom before anyone asks. The floor is swept. The benches are cleared. The tools are inspected, without realizing it. Yesterday's lessons have already become today's habits. Your master notices. He doesn't say anything. He simply hands you a wooden mallet. That feels like progress. Today, he explains, the village needs another small house. Not a grand manor, not a church. Simply a sturdy home for a farming family expecting their first child before winter arrives. A carpenter rarely builds monuments. He builds ordinary lives. And somehow, ordinary things often matter the most. Outside the workshop, several long oak beams wait upon the wagon. Each one carries the careful charcoal marks you drew yesterday. Seeing those familiar lines fills you with quiet satisfaction. For the first time, your own work will travel beyond the workshop, The horse pulls steadily through the waking village. Neighbors wave politely to your master. Children run alongside the wagon for a few moments before becoming distracted by a wandering goose that clearly has no interest in being chased. The building site lies near the edge of the village. Only a simple stone foundation has been completed. Everything above those stones will be wood. The master climbs down from the wagon and studies the foundation carefully. He walks its length, checks each corner, measures the distance once more. Even though the stonemasons completed their work yesterday, he trusts his own measurements before beginning. Preparation never ends. Several villagers arrive to help. House building is rarely the work of one craftsman. Neighbors lend hands. Farmers pause their own work. Friends gather together. One family's home becomes everyone's project. You quickly learn another medieval lesson. Communities survive by helping one another. The first beam is unloaded. It takes 6 people to carry it. Your shoulders immediately remind you that oak is considerably heavier than it looks. The master laughs quietly. Wood never gets lighter. Apparently that joke has existed for centuries. The first beam is carefully lowered onto the stone foundation. Not perfectly, just close. Then comes the careful adjustment. A gentle tap with the mallet. Another. One worker lifts. Another steadies. A third checks alignment. Tiny corrections slowly become perfect placement. The master kneels beside the beam. His carpenter's square rests briefly against the corner. He nods. Good. No speeches. Only another nod. Soon the second beam joins the first. Large wooden joints prepared inside the workshop begin fitting together exactly as planned. No nails hold them, only carefully carved mortise and tenon joints, shaped so precisely that each piece locks firmly into the next. You watch in amazement. The timber almost seems eager to find its proper place. Yesterday these pieces looked like ordinary beams. Today they become the skeleton of a home. Your master gestures for you to help with the wooden pegs. Each peg has been carved from seasoned oak. You place one carefully into its hole. The master hands you the mallet. Your first strike barely moves it. The second drives it halfway. The third seats it firmly. Tock, tock, tock. The satisfying sound echoes softly across the building site. One peg complete. Hundreds more await. The morning passes gently beneath clear blue skies. Birds dart through nearby hedges. A breeze carries the scent of wildflowers from surrounding fields. Somewhere a cow complains loudly about something that seems deeply important to cows. The workers continue calmly. No one rushes. The rhythm feels almost musical. Lift, align, check, peg, repeat. You begin recognizing the pattern. Everything in carpentry seems built upon simple actions, repeated with great care. By midday, the lower frame has taken shape. The outline of the future home is finally visible. Standing inside the wooden frame feels strangely moving. Yesterday it existed only in your master's imagination. Today you can stand inside it. Tomorrow a family will imagine furniture. Later, children will imagine adventures. Years from now, grandchildren may remember growing up beneath these very beams. A carpenter builds memories long before they happen. The thought lingers quietly in your mind. After a simple meal of coarse bread, cheese, onions, and cool water, work begins again. Now comes the most demanding task. Raising the wall frames. Long ropes are secured around the heavy timber. Several villagers gather together. The master gives calm instructions. No shouting. Only clear words. Steady. Lift. Together. Slowly, the enormous frame begins rising. At first, only a few inches. Then a foot. Then higher. Everyone pushes carefully. The structure seems almost alive. For one brief moment, you wonder whether gravity might win. Then another worker braces the frame with a long support beam. The wall stands upright. A quiet cheer spreads through the workers. Not loud. Just satisfied. Another side follows. Then another. By late afternoon, the simple house begins resembling exactly that. A house. Without walls. Without a roof. Yet unmistakably a home. Your master climbs a temporary wooden ladder to inspect each joint. You follow carefully. From above, The village stretches peacefully into the distance. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys. Fields ripple gently beneath the wind. The church bell rings somewhere far away. Everything appears wonderfully calm. The master checks one corner. He places his hand upon the beam. It will last. Those 3 words carry enormous meaning. Nothing is built merely for today. Everything is built for tomorrow, for next winter, for the next generation, perhaps even longer. As shadows slowly lengthen across the building site, the final beam for the day is lifted into place. You help drive the last wooden peg. Talk, talk, talk. The sound echoes softly through the evening air. Your hands ache pleasantly. Your shoulders feel heavy. Tiny splinters decorate your fingers despite your best efforts. Yet looking at the rising timber frame somehow makes every sore muscle worthwhile. You helped build that. Only a very small part. But still, you helped. The villagers begin packing away ropes and tools. Several pause to admire the day's work before walking home. One elderly woman smiles warmly at the unfinished house. "My grandson," she says quietly. You realize this will be his future home. Perhaps one day he will learn to walk across the floor you helped create. Perhaps he will carve his own toys from leftover scraps of oak. Perhaps he will someday become a carpenter himself. The idea feels strangely comforting. As the wagon carries you back toward the workshop beneath the warm glow of the setting sun, the unfinished house slowly disappears behind rows of apple trees. Tomorrow there will be rafters, then walls, then doors. Eventually smoke will rise from its chimney. Laughter will fill its rooms. Life will settle beneath its roof, and hidden inside every beam will remain the quiet care of patient hands that measured carefully, lifted together, and built not simply a house, but a place where ordinary medieval life could gently unfold. The farmhouse stands quietly behind you now, not finished, not yet filled with laughter, warm bread, or the comforting crackle of a fireplace, but strong, solid, patiently waiting for the weeks ahead. As the wagon rolls back toward the workshop, the evening sun paints everything in shades of amber. Long shadows stretch across the road. Birds begin returning to their nests, and the village slowly settles into its familiar rhythm. Your shoulders ache pleasantly. Your hands are sore. A tiny splinter hides somewhere beneath your thumb, stubbornly refusing to introduce itself until the exact moment you accidentally press against it. Apparently, splinters have excellent timing. The master notices you examining your thumb. Without saying much, he hands you a small iron needle. You'll need this. You quickly discover that medieval first aid is wonderfully uncomplicated. Find the splinter. Remove the splinter. Continue working. Luxury medicine will arrive several centuries later. Back at the workshop, something surprises you. No one goes home. Not yet. The day's construction may have ended, but the workshop still breathes with quiet purpose. Half-finished stools wait patiently beside one wall. A chest lacking its lid rests upon another bench. Several window shutters need smoothing before sunrise. Work simply changes form. It never truly stops. The master hangs his leather apron on its familiar peg before lighting several beeswax candles. Soft golden flames push back the growing darkness. The workshop becomes calmer than ever. Outside, the village slowly grows quiet. Inside, only gentle sounds remain. A plane gliding across oak, a whetstone whispering beneath steel, the soft crackle of the hearth. The peaceful rhythm almost feels like breathing. Tonight, you are finally allowed to work at one of the benches. Not alone, never alone, but beside the master. He places a rough oak board before you. We make a stool. Simple, practical, useful. Exactly the sort of object every medieval family needs. No carved throne, no royal furniture. Just 4 legs, a sturdy seat, and careful craftsmanship. The master lays out every piece you'll need. 4 square legs, 4 stretchers connecting them, 1 thick seat. Each part has already been measured. Now begins the careful work of shaping. You pick up the wooden plane. This time your hands remember yesterday's lesson. Do not force. Guide. You push gently. The blade begins singing its familiar quiet song. Shh, shh. Long ribbons curl away effortlessly. You smile without realizing it. The master notices. The tool likes you today. You suspect he may actually be joking. Only a little. Each pass leaves the oak smoother. Soon your fingertips glide across the surface without catching. The rough board slowly becomes something pleasant to touch. It is strangely satisfying. You understand why craftsmen often run their hands across finished furniture. Their fingers notice details their eyes sometimes miss. The master asks you to close your eyes. You hesitate. Then obey. Feel. Your fingertips travel slowly across two boards. One perfectly smooth. One containing tiny ridges almost invisible in the candlelight. With your eyes closed, the difference becomes obvious. The hands see differently, he says. You quietly remember those words. Soon the legs require shaping. Each must remain perfectly square. Too much removed from one side. The stool wobbles. Too little. The joints refuse to fit. You measure constantly, plane gently. Measure again. Patience has become your closest companion. Nearby, another apprentice sands a tabletop using coarse dried rushes instead of modern sandpaper. The rasping sound blends softly with the quiet workshop. Everyone works almost silently. Conversation feels unnecessary. The work itself fills the room. As the evening deepens, your master introduces another lesson. Grain direction. He turns one leg toward the candlelight. Look, the tiny lines flowing through the oak suddenly become visible. They resemble gentle rivers. Some curve. Others remain straight. Every piece of wood grew differently. Working with the grain feels easy. Working against it tears the surface. The wood itself quietly tells you which direction to travel. Food disappears almost as quickly. Soon the first customer of the day arrives. An elderly farmer enters, carrying something wrapped carefully in cloth. He places it gently upon the workbench. The master unwraps it. Inside rests an old wooden cradle. Its curved rockers have cracked with age. One side rail hangs loose. Tiny chew marks decorate the edges where a baby long ago explored the fascinating taste of furniture. The farmer smiles sadly. My granddaughter. He says nothing more. No explanation is necessary. The cradle belonged to his own children. Now he hopes it will hold another generation. Your master examines every joint carefully. He never rushes. Repairing old work deserves the same attention as creating something new. Perhaps even more. This one stays, he finally says. The farmer thanks him quietly before leaving. You gently run your fingers across the worn wood. Hundreds of tiny scratches cover its surface. Years of use have polished the oak smoother than any plane could accomplish. Furniture carries memories. You had never considered that before. The master begins showing you how repairs differ from new construction. Building something new allows perfect measurements. Repairing something old requires understanding another craftsman's decisions made decades earlier. Every joint tells a story. Every repair must respect that story. He carefully removes the broken rail. No force. No rushing. Only patience. The old wooden peg slides free. The damaged tenon becomes visible. Time, not poor craftsmanship, caused the failure. You watch closely as the master selects a replacement piece from a stack of seasoned oak. Not identical. Compatible. The grain matches remarkably well. The color comes surprisingly close. Within a few years, no one will easily notice the repair. That seems intentional. Good repairs do not demand attention. They quietly serve. The master hands you the broken rail. What happened? You study it. At first, all you see is a crack. Then you notice something else. The grain changes direction near the break. A tiny knot weakened the wood years ago. Countless, gentle rocking motions slowly widened the weakness until finally it failed. You explain your observation. The master nods. You listened. Interesting. He doesn't say you looked. He says you listened. Apparently wood speaks in many different ways. As morning continues, more villagers arrive. One woman brings a cracked breadboard. A shepherd needs a broken gate repaired. Another farmer asks for a new wheelbarrow handle. None of the jobs are glamorous. Every one of them matters. Without the breadboard, meals become difficult. Without the gate, sheep wander away. Without the handle, heavy loads become nearly impossible to move. A carpenter quietly supports nearly every part of village life. You spend much of the afternoon repairing, rather than building. Each project teaches a different lesson. Old wood behaves differently than fresh timber. Some joints refuse to separate. Others fall apart the moment they're touched. Every repair begins with observation. Only afterward comes action. At one point, you become impatient while removing an old wooden peg. You strike slightly too hard. The surrounding timber splinters. Only a little. But enough. You freeze. The master calmly examines the damage. It teaches, nothing more. Together you carefully repair your mistake before continuing. Embarrassing? A little. Useful? Very much. As sunlight pours through the workshop windows, the repaired cradle slowly comes back together. Fresh oak blends almost invisibly with timber shaped decades earlier. The curved rockers move smoothly once again. The new peg fits perfectly. The master gently rocks the cradle once. Back, forward. Back, silent, steady, ready. You smile. Soon a new baby will sleep inside it, perhaps never knowing how close it came to being discarded. The farmer returns before evening. His weathered face brightens immediately upon seeing the finished cradle. He runs one rough hand across the polished rail. For several quiet moments, he says nothing. Then he simply nods. Thank you. No grand celebration, no applause. Only gratitude. Sometimes, the smallest words carry the greatest weight. After the farmer leaves, you glance once more toward the doorway where he disappeared. You realize something quietly profound. Not every carpenter builds new things. Sometimes the greatest gift is helping old things continue serving the people who love them. The workshop grows peaceful once again. Fresh shavings mix with old wood. New timber stands beside furniture crafted decades before. Past and future share the same room. As you carefully sweep the floor before sunset, you notice one tiny oak shaving caught beneath the repaired cradle. You pick it up. Tomorrow it will probably become part of the morning fire. Even that little shaving still has one final purpose. And somehow, that feels exactly right.